guys, thanks for listening to part two with myself, Leroy Mills Realty, and Linda Ball, Associates. So last season, Linda, again, for the people who have not listened to last season, not last season, but last week, we encourage you guys to go back before you listen to this portion. Go back, listen to that listen to the first part one, and then we'll come back and it's a continuation. Okay. So Linda, again, where can they find you?
630-285-0255.
All right, so as we continue, last week we were talking about buyers. So this week we'll wrap up a little bit of that for those of you who listened last week. We'll continue about a minute or two, then we'll jump into sellers. So Linda, last week we were talking about tenants in entirety. That's where we ended off. So let's wrap that up, and then let's get into the responsibility of you as a seller.
Okay. Tenants by the entirety is a special way to take title to your home if you are a married couple, legally married, and if this is your personal residence, not an investment property. If you meet those two criteria, then the deed would say your names, husband and wife, as tenants by the entirety. Now, I like to talk in terms of examples. I have a client who had an asphalt paving business.
Okay.
He didn't think he needed to pay payroll taxes. He just forgot. So the IRS didn't forget, and the IRS was his creditor. The IRS could not take their home because it was in tenants by the entirety, and that's protection for the innocent spouse. Mm-hmm. So the IRS could not take their home, but when they as a couple decided to sell the house, the proceeds were split. Half the proceeds went to the wife, and the husband's half went to the IRS. So again, it's just, I hope you never need this protection, but I've seen it used for lawsuits, car accidents, any kind of crazy thing in this world. Everyone seems to be litigious. Mm-hmm. So just if you're married, and if you should have a house and you are married and you're living in it as your personal residence, check your deed. If it doesn't say tenants by the entirety, get back to Leroy or I, and for a very nominal fee, we can change it and give you this wonderful protection, because people are litigious. So that's kind of the summary on the tenants by the entirety.
So as we said, this week we're moving into, so as I was telling you, some people do not want to hire an attorney because other states, and sometimes they come from other states, mm-hmm. and no, my realtor does everything, but we here in Illinois, we are an attorney state, and so we need to, we have an attorney that does our closing. Mm-hmm. So what is your responsibility as a seller? When I have this home and now I'm going to sell it, I come to you. I said I want to sell my home. So what is your responsibility to me?
Okay. As a seller, I would be delighted to explain my responsibilities to you, but let me go back on your statement about some states use escrow closings and not.
Great.
The transfer of real estate is a state-by-state issue. So the laws in Illinois are different than the laws in Florida or California or Arizona or Colorado. In those states, Florida, California, Arizona, Colorado, they do not think attorneys are necessary at the actual closing. Attorneys are used only when there's a problem and there's a lawsuit. So it's just in those, it's called an escrow state. The title company does all the figures, does all the paperwork. The realtors do all the negotiations.
I know.
With the home inspections, with the closing date, with any kind of issues. The realtors handle that. So you would act, realtors in these escrow states act as attorneys. And the title company just prepares the deed and does all the title prorations and everything else in terms of that respect. So it's because the state decides how they want to do it. Mm-hmm. The same thing with real estate taxes. Illinois real estate taxes are due in arrears. And what that means in English is this is the year 2022. We just in 2022 we pay the 2021 taxes. In California in 2022 they're paying forward. They're paying the 2023 taxes.
Okay.
It's a state issue. So it's just, real estate is governed by the state legislature, and whatever the state decides, the whole state is bound.
Oh,
So
I want you to keep that thought, but I don't want to forget this thought. So keep
Uh-huh.
that thought. For those of you who buys property cash and you get a credit, I've had my clients come back and say, well, I didn't get no money for pay my taxes, and even though that happens a lot, especially you guys as cash buyers, you got to be careful that if you're buying this year, when you pay your taxes, okay, there's no escrow. So that's one of the you can kind of expand on that a little bit for some of the people who buy as cash. But continue with your thought.
Well, let me go to that. There are scrupulous people in this world, and then there are unscrupulous people. And if they see you're a cash buyer, they might take advantage of you because you don't know what I'm supposed to give you or not. And I've seen it happen. And the law in Illinois is once the closing is over and you pass the check, or now it's a wire. You have to send wires, anything over $50,000. But once you send your wire, they give you the keys, you sign the last form, it's over. I can't go back and argue for you on the taxes.
No.
It's like buyer beware, and you just lost a couple thousand on the tax credit because they should have given you a credit, but oops, they didn't. You didn't know to ask, and
that's the reason of hiring an attorney.
That's one of the reasons.
That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons. What a very important reason, though.
Yeah, because it's just people cheat. If you're working without a realtor, they have contracts on the internet that are pro-seller. That will take the seller's closing costs and put them on the buyer's side. And there's no attorney review in those contracts. There's no home inspection in those contracts. And someone called the other day and they said, "This is my contract, and I want to hire you." And it's like, I can't do anything. This is a contract. Between the four corners of the contract, you're stuck. You signed a contract. Your two outs are one, duress. And I said, did they take a gun and put it to your head and say, sign it or you're out? Or the second and only other defense you have is undue influence. Was this a day where you had, celebrated St. Patrick's Day early and you were a little bit under the weather and you can prove it? Those are your two defenses. I told the client, you're stuck with this contract. So beware. There are nasty people out there. And not every contract is a real estate approved contract. The internet has other contracts that look very similar, but way, way worse for you, the seller or the buyer, because they have pro-seller contracts and they have pro-buyer contracts where they'll flip the costs for each of you because that's how the contract's written. So it's just, there are so many red flags out there, and people go into this and think they're doing the right thing.
They do, and I've had many people come to me after they screwed up. They're like, "Oh, this is what I did." I'm like, "What can I do now? You already signed."
Yeah.
So it's not. I'm sure we've gone through the same thing, and I've, over my career, many folks will come to me when they're done, totally complete. "Oh, Leroy, you know what happened?" I'm like, "What happened?" "Oh, really?" "You're going to come to me now after you do that?" So it happens. And they come to you after because they think they know. Mama bought a house, Papa bought a house, and Papa said sign, and they're like, "Okay, go ahead and sign." And then when they get screwed, they're like, "Didn't know?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Can't you fix that?"
Okay, yeah, they want you to fix it.
You're an attorney.
Yeah.
I'll hire you. I'll pay you your fee. Can't you fix that? And I'm like, no, I'm bound by the law. I would love to, but it isn't going to happen. So it's just, there's a saying, you get what you pay for.
Always.
And, it's just, you need to just take care of this. Is one of your biggest financial investments. So, don't scrimp and say, I don't need that. It's my belief and my feeling that I help you a lot. And it's just, I want a perfect transaction. I don't settle for less. And Leroy doesn't either.
No.
We want you to be...
this is what we do. This is our life's work.
Yeah.
So we want it done right all the time.
We want a hug at the end and attaboy and those referrals too.
Referrals are great.
Yes, they are. I second that.
Yes, you second that, right? Referrals are great, by the way. Again, you're listening to Linda on the Mills Social Talk Podcast along with Leroy and Mills Realty. So we were continuing talking about sellers. We were at sellers and how we where were we? We were at sellers.
We just started talking sellers.
Yeah, we kind of went off there for a bit.
Yeah, we just have fun sometimes.
Yeah.
We're going to get back on topic.
Let's get back on track because we talk about some people who don't like to hire attorneys and you know to be honest, I have a closing. They just scheduled it while on my way here, and I've never spoken to the seller. I'm not the seller attorney. I'm like, who's your seller attorney? Oh, here's his name. So the bank called today. I was on my way. He says, we're trying to close. I'm like, okay. Did the seller? Are you scheduled? Well, who's the seller attorney? I'm like, well, aren't you guys talking to him? Mm-hmm. I've never gotten any communication. That's why I tell folks, I'm not saying to use who but I'm just saying I like to work with people who I know, so that I know I will have communication. And so I call my client. I said, it closes Monday. He's like, really? No one called me. I said, Monday. He said, and then they said, well, your attorney's trying to schedule it for Monday at 11. And he's like, well, I can't. I'm at work. I can't be there. I'm like, and he has no idea he's closing.
And what about his furniture? Is it going to be moved out?
Then I'm asking him, did you go and take care of all the
utilities?
Not the utility, but he was supposed to make some repairs. No. Well, when? Because of Monday. So I called him and tell him, but of course his attorney doesn't communicate with him because, I don't know, his attorney doesn't communicate. So, but he's closing, and he didn't know.
There are people who just don't care. I think, Leroy, when you were little, your parents taught you do everything you do with pride.
Absolutely.
And do it the best you can. And I know we talked about that before, but that was our upbringings. Yeah. That's how you were brought up. That's how I was brought up. And it carries through in our lives. Leroy and I care about every aspect of your transaction. We don't want surprises. We don't want oopses. We want it to be right on. And we really want you to know what's going on in this transaction so that you can have a timing chart. You can get the repairs done. You can get the movers lined up. You can get the utilities out of your name. And everything goes smoothly. It's a lot of work, but we got to help you time it out. Because if you don't, it's chaos in the end.
It is chaos.
And there's enough stress in our lives that, moving is one of life's 7 stressors. Mm-hmm. Divorce, death of a loved one. Moving is on that list. So it is stressful. But as your team captains, we can work with you and get you on the right track so that you can time it out. And that's what we do. It's just we know where the pitfalls are. So we know when you got to start doing this and we got to start doing that. And you got to listen to us because we know what to tell you.
We've been there, done that many times over.
Amen.
So we know.
Amen.
So let's continue to wrap up about again because just your responsibility, how you pull title and what what you do and costs and some of the harder costs that we can't get away from.
Sure.
Because everybody wants on the cheap, but some things you just can't change.
No, it's
the law.
The law in Illinois, and each county has their own specific costs. Mm-hmm. Some cities have their own specific costs, and there are costs that you can't do without. So as a seller, you're going to have the first cost that you have is you have to pay off your mortgage. Mm-hmm. And if you had the loan in forbearance, you're going to have to bring it current. If you have a HELOC, a home equity line of credit, you've got to close that line. We have to pay it off at closing. Those are musts. Next is you're going to have to reimburse the buyer for the taxes. As we said earlier, taxes are in arrears. So if I were closing on your house today, you would have to pay for the whole year 2021 because you owned it, you lived there. And you'd have to pay from the first of the year to today at 68 days. So you'd have to pay 68 days of the full tax bill from last year. That's a must. You can't negotiate that. You can't say, I don't want to pay taxes. That's not a legitimate transfer to the buyers. It's just you have to pay it. The next thing that Leroy, I keep saying cha-ching, cha-ching, and costs. I feel bad about this.
I know, but sellers, you got to pay.
Yeah.
Well, buyers, you got to remember, buyers have their costs and sellers got their costs. So last week we talked about buyers' costs. So now we're just talking about sellers.
Okay.
It costs money.
It does. But the good news is the more you pay down your mortgage, the more money you get at the end. You get at the closing table. And I got to backtrack. Let me tell you one really good thing that's kind of like a secret that attorneys don't spend time telling their clients. When you have your mortgage, if you have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, if in your I'm making up examples in my head. So if your payment for principal and interest is $1,000 for easy math, or let's say it's $1,200 for
easy math, $1,200.
Easier math. So if it's $1,200, if you make one extra payment a year of $1,200, let's just say when you get your tax refund, you pay in an extra $1,200 to your mortgage. Or if you don't like that approach, just every month pay in $100 extra. If you do that religiously for 23 years, you'll have your loan paid in full. You cut 7 years off of your mortgage. So that's something that I would be telling my buyers because, I know if you don't have 100, you can't do it. But if you could have 100 in this hypothetical example, you could save 7 years of mortgage payments. And Leroy, don't you find many people don't even know that?
They don't know. They do not know.
Yeah.
So that's the true thing. But I do tell my clients that. Mm-hmm. I try to tell my buyers that. Yeah, my clients know. Not everybody do it. I mean, I know for us we've done, but that's what I've always encouraged my clients. One of the things I encourage my buyers, I'm not talking about buyers, I'm talking about seller, but one of the things I encourage my buyers, every 3 to 4 years, do an insurance evaluation. Because your insurance goes up, and it's like, oh, I'm paying $1,000, you could have been paying $800. But we want to get back on sellers. But those are things. I mean, we have so much to talk about that the half an hour podcast is not enough. So you would have to come and see us. But let's dive a little bit more into our cost, because how long have we been in this business? We can be here 2 days talking. So let's get into.
And that's not even the war stories or the funny closings.
All right, good. Just talk about real estate. So we talked about. Okay. We're looking at some of the costs.
Okay, but can I go back to insurance because you brought up a really good point.
Okay.
With insurance, in addition to reviewing it, you want to look at what your deductible is. Because if you have a $200 deductible versus a $500 deductible versus $1,000 versus $2,000, there's a whole difference in the premium.
Yeah.
So, many people don't know that, but talk to your insurance agent and say, if I change the deductibles, what would I be paying? Because we always went with a higher deductible and prayed that nothing would happen.
Never happened, yeah.
But it's just a way to save more money because with a higher deductible, you don't have the out-of-pocket semi-annual cost. Okay, returning to the other costs.
Yeah, the other cost. This is seller's cost.
Seller's cost. Okay, I'll be good. I'll follow the agenda.
No, because I know we can go all over the place. I mean, it's all real estate. It's all real estate. So, I just want for the people.
Can I tell you my funniest real estate story? It wasn't with you, but I had an Oriental couple that had to bring Buddha to the closing because Buddha had to look at all the documents.
No.
They brought a statue of Buddha, and if this was Buddha, they had to scan it, and then they'd look at Buddha, and Buddha would say okay, and then they could sign it. It took 5 hours to close, but they did it with Buddha.
Okay.
So okay. And I don't know why I said that, but it was just so funny that it was like I had to bring a little humor into this.
Okay, all right.
Okay, now back to the script. Okay, the other taxes that you're going to have to pay, non-negotiable. As a seller, you have to pay sales tax. The sales tax to the state of Illinois is $1 per thousand. So in our hypothetical, you're selling a $200,000 house. You have a $200 sales tax bill that goes to the state of Illinois. If you're in any county, Cook, Kane, DuPage, Will, Lake, the counties have the same, 50 cents per thousand. So again, in our 200,000 hypothetical, it's 50 cents per thousand or $100 transfer tax to the county. Now, there are some get out of town taxes.
Okay.
Chicago has a get out of town tax that's $3 per thousand. So in our hypothetical $200,000 example, you're going to pay $600 to Chicago for the privilege of moving out. But there's more. For Chicago, they have a welcome to Chicago tax, and that's at $7.
$7
per thousand.
$7 or $7.50? $7.50 per thousand.
$7.50 per thousand. So it's 7 times 2, 1,400, and then whatever the 50 cents is.
Yeah.
So Chicago loves it when you move out, and they love it more when you move in because they make more money. Chicago also has a couple of other special presents for you sellers. They have a Chicago water cert that has to be paid, and that's a couple $100. They have a Chicago zoning cert. That's a couple $100. They have to come in and see if you're a single family, a legal 2-flat, a legal 3-flat, and they charge you for this. And you have to have it for the title company, or they won't record the deed. So it's more cha-ching, cha-ching. Now, we've talked about Chicago, but some of the suburbs have transfer taxes. Cicero is one of the highest ones. They're at $10 per thousand.
Okay.
Unless you know Mario. Now, I don't know what that means, but someone said I know Mario, and I got my stamp. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay.
As long as Mario got it, and we've got the right price on the stamp.
We're good.
Yep. It's one of those things that stop. I don't want to know anymore. Others are $3 per thousand. Some charge the seller, and some charge the buyer. For example, in Schaumburg, it's a seller charge, but in Wheaton, it's a buyer charge. So it's just based upon, in this case, it's local ordinance. Locally, they can decide whether they want to charge buyer or seller and what the amount is. Itasca doesn't charge anything, so in Bloomingdale, so some municipalities don't charge anything, but others charge, and you're again stuck with whatever the municipality rule is. Next, you need a single premium insurance policy. You don't need it, but you need to provide it to the buyer's attorney and the buyer's lender. What this does for the buyer's attorney and the buyer's lender is tells them what liens against the property. You know, does the seller have a mortgage and a home equity? Did the seller get into a little bit of trouble with the IRS where there's an IRS lien? Did Visa file a lawsuit and there's a lien from Visa? So the seller needs to, through their attorney, order what's called a title insurance policy. And this goes right away to the lender for review, and it goes to the buyer's attorney. And it's required. It's how you produce, in terms of legal words, good and marketable title. So good and marketable title through the title insurance. Title insurance companies are licensed, bonded, they've got lots of money. So that's how come the lenders of the world and the buyer's attorneys of the world will accept this as a document that's locked in stone. So that's going to be a little bit more expensive, and the title cost is based upon the sales price of your home. Next, we have the survey cost. That shows the four corners of your lot. It's done for a couple of reasons. One, you need to know where your lot ends. And the second thing is up at the top of the survey, or sometimes on the bottom, it has the legal description. So as an attorney, I need to match the legal description on the survey with the legal description on the title to know that they jive. I also have to ask my when I'm representing a buyer, is if I were to be in a helicopter hovering over the new house you're buying, is this what it looks like? Just to make sure I don't get the wrong survey, because that's happened.
It happens, yeah.
So the survey is a cost. It's around $500. Next, we've got the two fees for us, the real estate commission and the legal fees. And I know Leroy and I both work at a fee to compensate us and to give us money to pay our mortgages, but we're on the low side of we try to
keep it reasonable.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. So those are kind of in a nutshell all of the costs you have. And I hate to present it that way, but if you should follow our instructions and send in those extra payments, and it's called additional to principal, then you would have less to pay off on your mortgage, and at the closing table you would get a bigger check reflecting your profit in the home. Now, many people ask me, when I get this check from the sale, do I have to pay tax on the whole amount? So let's say on our $200,000 house sale, you had costs of maybe, you had no mortgage. So maybe you had costs and you're going to get 160 back or 180. Well, let's just say 175 back. You had 25,000 of costs. Okay, so of this 175, am I going to have to pay capital gains tax on it? And the answer is maybe. If you lived in the house 2 out of the last 5 years, then there's no capital gains tax on the first $250,000 of profit per person. So if you're a single person and you sell the house and you made $250,000 or less, no tax. If you're a married couple or two people bought the house, 2 friends or whatever, you get $500,000, $250,000 per person. But you had to live there, and for the last 2 out of 5 years. Now, this law could change. I know we're running into recession, and they're talking about all kind of changes, but for right now, you're protected, and there is no capital gains tax on the sale. In terms of recording the release deed, that would be something done at the closing. They would produce a release, and the title company sends it to the credit bureaus so that your credit score shows that you paid off the mortgage, which is important, and that's taken care of automatically. That's kind of it with the sale.
Well, that's we're sort of just wrapping up. So you kind of brought it all the way down to the, we got a minute left. So I want to say, you have been listening to the Mill Social Talk podcast. This is part 2 of our podcast with Linda Ball from Linda Ball Associate. We did part 1 last week. We want you to go back and listen to that, and then come back and then listen to part 2 if you have not yet listened to part 2. So hey, Linda, how can they find you?
630-285-0255. Again,
this is Leroy at the Mill Social Talk podcast. Guys, thanks for listening. Please share the video. Please follow us and let us know that any comments, please comment us, email us, and let us know how we can help. And remember, I always say, if there's a topic you want us to talk about, please let us know, and we will bring that topic to you with the best of the best in the business. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next Mill Social Talk podcast. Thank you.